There is a quiet, constant wound that runs beneath the surface of the modern mind, the expectation of fairness. It is the invisible contract we believe the universe, our relationships, and the systems we inhabit should honor, yet it is constantly, brutally violated. Every act of betrayal, every undeserved failure, every success handed to another becomes a knife that cuts deep into our sense of justice. We are taught to believe in karma, in balance, in a moral ledger that must eventually reconcile itself. But what if this belief, this desperate need for a just world, is the very thing keeping you weak? What if the constant pursuit of fairness is a psychological trap, a beautifully gilded cage built from resentment and eternal frustration? This expectation, while comforting, is a profound denial of reality, a refusal to accept the chaotic, indifferent nature of the external world. It ties your inner peace not to your own actions, but to the behavior of others, transforming you from a sovereign agent into a passive, perpetually disappointed victim. To truly grow, we must confront this illusion, understand its cost, and embark on the radical journey of mastering the injustice we can never control. The path to true autonomy begins by acknowledging that life is not fair, and that is where your greatest power resides. To demand fairness is to outsource your power, to wait eternally for a debt that will never be repaid, suffocating your own potential in the process. Where does this tenacious demand for external fairness even come from? Its roots are deep, buried in the child's mind, which first learned to distinguish between mine and theirs, between right and wrong, as dictated by external authority. As adults, this translates into an entitlement complex, a deep-seated belief that our virtue, our effort, or our mere existence should guarantee us a certain outcome. This is the pathetic paradox of the modern, unexamined life, outsourcing your internal state, your eudaimonia, to the unpredictable, chaotic, and often malicious whims of the world. You are sacrificing your inner citadel for the fleeting comfort of external validation and justice, a comfort that rarely, if ever, arrives. Think of the energy you waste on mentally replaying scenarios, formulating arguments that will never be heard, and cataloging the injustices committed against you. This relentless internal audit is not an act of justice, it is an act of self-sabotage, a willing surrender of your present power to the ghosts of the past. The demand for fairness is the ultimate denial of radical responsibility, the belief that if the rules of the game were only different, then you would finally succeed. But the mature philosopher recognizes that the game itself is inherently unfair, and the only true move is to change your relationship to the board, not to beg the dealer for a new set of rules. The price of this expectation is your freedom, and the coin you pay is your present potential. The immediate, visceral consequence of chasing fairness is the accumulation of resentment, a poison that is entirely self-administered. Resentment is the silent, corrosive mental currency paid when we hold on to the belief that we deserved a better outcome than we received. It is the ego's refusal to accept reality on reality's own terms. This inner rage, this chronic feeling of having been wronged, does not punish the perpetrator. It binds the victim to the past, consuming all available mental energy. It is an invisible chain that prevents forward momentum, forcing you to constantly look backward at the perceived transgression. When you carry the weight of perceived injustices, you become a slave to your own history and to the people who inflicted the wrong. You give them permanent, rent-free residence in your mind, allowing their past actions to dictate your present mood and future decisions. The greatest tragedy of chronic resentment is that it is often mistaken for moral strength, a righteous defense of self. But in reality, it is the ultimate psychological weakness, a surrender of your will to something external. It is time to look at this emotional ledger and recognize that the debt of fairness will never be paid, and the only path to liberation is to tear up the contract entirely. To harbor resentment is to drink the poison and wait for your enemy to die, a pathetic and fatal strategy for any philosopher of growth. To break this cycle, we must turn to the cold, rational clarity of the Stoic Protocol, most clearly articulated by Epictetus, the dichotomy of control. This principle is not a gentle suggestion. It is a radical surgical procedure on the mind. It demands that you ruthlessly divide all phenomena into two categories, things you can control and things you cannot. The actions of others, the outcomes of your efforts, the distribution of luck, and yes, the presence of injustice, all fall squarely into the realm of the uncontrollable. Our judgment, our intentions, our effort, and our response to injustice are the only things that remain firmly within our power. This is the core of Stoic sovereignty. Your peace cannot be taken from you, only surrendered. When an injustice occurs, the philosopher pauses and asks, is the source of my suffering the event itself, or is it my demand that the event should not have happened? The event is external, beyond your reach. The demand is internal, and it is a self-imposed chain. Accepting the unfairness, not as a personal curse, but as a fact of reality, is the first and most crucial step toward claiming your own power. This is the ultimate act of self-liberation, because the moment you stop fighting what is outside your power, you can finally focus all your energy on what is truly your own. The practical application of the dichotomy of control is the construction of your inner citadel. Marcus Aurelius described this fortress of the mind as the ultimate refuge against the chaotic world. This citadel is not built from avoidance. It is built from the rigidity of your principles and the flexibility of your expectations. Every time an external event, a cruel remark, a betrayal, an undeserved defeat tries to breach your walls, you invoke the Stoic question, does this penetrate my prohairesis, my faculty of choice? The answer is always no. Only you can choose your judgment of the event. The injustice is the external blow. Your suffering is the internal interpretation you choose to assign to it. The Citadel teaches you that the damage is external, but the wound is internal and entirely optional. This makes you, philosophically, unbeatable. The external world can strip you of possessions, reputation, and even health, but it can never take away your ability to choose how you respond. This fortress is the ultimate declaration of autonomy, the defiant no to the world's attempts to control your inner state. When you understand that your character is the only thing that truly belongs to you, the perceived unfairness of the world loses its moral and emotional grip. True strength is not the ability to prevent unfairness, but the unwavering commitment to remain unharmed by it. To gain radical perspective on our suffering, the Stoics practiced the view from above, a powerful cognitive exercise. Imagine zooming out from your specific, consuming injustice, from your house to your city to the tiny, ephemeral globe spinning in the cold, indifferent cosmos. What is the gravity of your perceived unfairness when measured against the millennia of human history, the chaos of nature, or the vastness of the universe? This practice is not meant to invalidate your pain, but to trivialize its importance to the cosmic order, effectively cutting the existential wires that connect your ego to the injustice. Your suffering is not the center of the world's attention. It is a momentary blip. This cold, hard truth is immensely liberating. It pulls you out of the intense, narrow focus of self-pity and places your problem into its proper, microscopic context. The unfairness you feel is not a singular event directed at you, but merely a mundane occurrence in a vast, random system. This expanded perspective allows the emotional intensity to dissipate, leaving behind only the raw data of the event, ready to be processed rationally. The view from above is the philosopher's lens, replacing the victim's mirror with a panoramic, objective map of reality, showing you that the injustice, while real, is merely a fact of the chaotic landscape, not a personal tragedy. Your life's narrative is too important to be derailed by a mere speck of cosmic dust. Acceptance, however, is merely the beginning. The final step toward mastery demands a deeper, more challenging philosophical turn. Amor Fati. Friedrich Nietzsche asks us not just to endure the inevitable unfairness, but to love it, to will it to happen again, exactly as it did. This is not passive resignation. It is an active, defiant embrace of one's fate, including all the pain, the betrayal, and the undeserved suffering. Nietzsche understood that the only way to overcome the crippling power of regret and resentment is to see every single event, good or bad, fair or unfair, as an absolutely necessary ingredient for the person you have become. Without that specific betrayal, without that crushing failure, you would not possess the wisdom, the strength, or the specific edge you carry today. The philosopher who practices Amor Fati sees injustice not as a block, but as raw material, a forceful resistance that tempers the spirit. It transforms a curse into a kind of twisted blessing, a unique, challenging curriculum designed specifically for your growth. This is the alchemist's fire, the willingness to take the ugly, leaden reality of unfairness and forge it into the gold of self-sovereignty. The path to greatness is littered with the remnants of injustice, and those who prevail are those who saw the injustice as fuel, not as a stop sign. The greatest Nietzschean lesson is the transformation of resentment into fuel, the conversion of negative emotional energy into creative power. Resentment, if held, is corrosive, but if channeled, it becomes a fierce, focused driver. Every instance of unfairness, every obstacle placed in your way, becomes a proof of concept for your will. You take the sting of the wrong and transform it into the single-minded focus required to build a life so strong, so autonomous, that the external opinions and actions of others become utterly irrelevant. This is the active expression of the Wille zur Macht, the drive not to dominate others, but to overcome your own lower nature, your own self-pity, and your own reliance on external approval. You use the perceived injury as a permanent, motivating reminder that you must outgrow the environment that wounded you. The only true revenge against injustice is to live a life that proves the injustice was nothing more than a temporary inconvenience, a fleeting test of your resolve. This is a crucial pivot. Instead of asking, "Why me?" the sovereign individual asks, "How can I use this to make me stronger, more focused, and more independent?" The energy of your anger should never be directed outward to blame, but inward to build the unshakable self. This synthesis leads us to the final, most radical identity shift, moving definitively from the victim to the sovereign. The victim is defined by what has been done to them. The sovereign is defined by what they choose to do next. Unfairness is the ultimate test of this commitment. It is the moment you decide whether to allow an external event to define your internal reality, or whether you will exert your radical ownership over your response. When injustice strikes, The philosopher sees it not as a setback, but as a crucible of autonomy. It is the universe giving you the perfect opportunity to prove that your strength is internal and not dependent on favorable external conditions. The path to autonomy is not about being protected from injustice. It is about being unshakable when injustice occurs. To choose sovereignty is to embrace the anti-victim mindset, recognizing that while the world may be unfair, your response to it is entirely under your command. This shift is what separates those who simply exist from those who truly live. The unwavering commitment to define your value and purpose from within, independent of the world's moral scorecard. The only power the injustice holds is the power you grant it through your attention and your emotional attachment to the idea of fairness. The ultimate freedom, then, is the surrender of the expectation of fairness itself. When you stop believing that you deserve a specific, just outcome, you unlock an immense capacity for calm, rational action. The weight of the world's unfairness lifts, and you are no longer burdened by the need to correct every moral imbalance you encounter. This freedom is terrifying because it means embracing a world that is fundamentally indifferent to your moral striving. But it is also liberating because it means your only true compass is your internal integrity. You are free to pursue your goals, to act virtuously, not because you expect a reward, but because it is the highest expression of your nature, the summum bonum. This is the state of true inner peace, where your happiness is no longer contingent upon the actions of others or the random distribution of luck. It is a declaration of independence from the universal moral ledger, a commitment to defining success and worth on your own terms. When you accept the universe's indifference, you realize that your purpose is not to change the world's fairness, but to perfect your own character within its chaos. This radical acceptance transforms all struggle into a meaningful, personal exercise of your will and your virtue, making your life a work of art rather than a reaction to the environment. Your commitment to this philosophy must be sealed with a sovereign vow, a radical commitment to abandon the pursuit of external justice. The steps are clear. First, when the sting of unfairness hits, immediately apply the dichotomy of control, separating the external event, the injustice, from your internal response, your judgment. Second, refuse to let the emotional energy curdle into resentment. Instead, instantly channel the energy into a productive task that affirms your self-reliance. This is the alchemist's pivot. Third, practice the view from above daily to remind yourself of the triviality of the wrong in the grand scheme of things. Your focus should not be on what was lost, but on what you have gained, the lesson, the resilience, the increased autonomy. Every time you catch yourself demanding that things should have been different, replace that thought with the Nietzschean mantra, I will it to be this way, for it is what forged me. This vow is your new operating system. It is the end of the victim narrative and the beginning of a life driven by self-made power. This is the difference between a life of reaction and a life of deliberate, sovereign creation. Embrace the unfairness, for it is the ultimate, necessary weight that builds the muscle of your soul. The journey of the growth philosopher is defined not by the absence of pain, but by the mastery of the pain that inevitably comes. The moment you stop waiting for the world to become fair, you start to live. You replace the futile hope for external justice with the powerful reality of internal integrity. You become the architect of your own peace, a fortress unmoved by the chaos at its gates. True strength is not the power to escape unfairness, but the unshakable will to be defined by your response to it. The unfairness is the universe's ultimate gift, a mandatory training session for your soul. Now, I challenge you. Which specific injustice from your past are you still allowing to dictate your present mood and energy? How will you apply the dichotomy of control to finally break the chain of resentment? Share your commitments below and join our community of sovereign thinkers who choose to use chaos as a catalyst for their growth. I will see you on the next stage of our shared journey.